Hi, I'm Simon Alam, and this video is about a chapter from a book by Donald Norman. The book is known as The Design of Everyday Things, and the chapter I'm going to talk about is known as The Design Challenge. So this chapter starts by the first paragraph of the chapter is about natural design and evolutionary design. So what Donald Norman meant by evolutionary design is that, for example, a product that is released in the market, he says that it should be allowed to stand in the market for long enough. Why? Because if it stays in the market for long enough, then more people will get to use it, and therefore a lot of feedback, a lot of data, a lot of information can be collected, and all of that information can then be used to improve that product. And this has to happen gradually, and the more gradual the process is, the more we can move towards perfection. But as nowadays we can see that this is not really the case, because we are living in the consumer society, and in the consumer society, two mighty factors dominate the market. One of them is novelty, and the other is speed. What I mean by novelty, what Donald Norman meant by novelty, is that customers, they always want products that stand out. They want products that are different from others, and they want it now. And you cannot really blame them for wanting all this, because the manufacturers, they are listening to them and they are delivering. So why not ask for it, right? And it's quite often it is the case that even before the current model of a certain product is out into the market, the next model is being talked about. Not only talked about, the next model is already being worked on. So in these circumstances, it is really difficult for natural design, the gradual process of design to take place. And as a result, we are left with a number of hastily made products which pack too much features that we probably don't even need. Moving on from natural design, the next topic that Donald Norman talked about in this chapter was why designers go astray. Why they deviate from their normal path? Why don't they do what is expected of them? So there are actually three different factors that make designers go astray. The first one is aesthetics. The designers, they are too worried about the outlook of the product. They care so much about the way the products look that they neglect all the other smaller factors, which are actually more important factors, like ergonomics and usability. So and the global culture has become pretty much like this nowadays, and whatever looks good, that is marketable, and people seldom think about usability. If it looks good, then people buy it. They sell these products. They sell, and this is a huge problem. And this is not allowed. This is one of the things that is causing designers to lose their focus. And the next factor that makes designers inefficient is that designers themselves, they are not typical users. They're not like us. What they do is the products that they make, they themselves are experts of those products, and so they use them in a way that normal users cannot. And therefore, when users complain about these products, they seldom understand them. They fail to put themselves in their shoes and imagine how things would be, and they always look from their perspective. Not always, like many designers. This is why they make so many errors. And so they handle these products with a level of technological know-how and sophistication that is not possible in the case of most users. And so that's one problem. The third problem is that designers usually don't really get to contact users directly. What they have is a middleman, and the middleman is the client, which who buys these products on behalf of the users. And in many cases, these can be wholesalers who just buy these products in bulk, and they then distribute them to retail outlets. And in other cases, it could be representatives of different organizations. And so in all of these cases, these clients, the main thing that they care about is the cost of the product, and also in many cases durability of the product. They don't ask questions like, okay, so will people be able to use this, or is this easy to learn? And these things, they don't usually ask questions like this. They just mean business. They care about the cost and the durability of the product. And so these are the problems. These are the factors which cause the designers to go astray. Now, moving on to the next topic is we can understand a measure of the complexity of the design process if we look at these two factors. Why design is said to be a complex process is because it is the products, the devices, or whatever is made by these designers are in the end made for complex beings like us humans. We're very intelligent beings, and designing for human beings is not an easy thing. And especially, for example, if you're a mobile phone manufacturer, and say, for example, you want to release a product, design a product that is usable by as many people as possible, then what you could do is you could make an average. You can make an average estimation and create that product, and that might be usable by the majority of the population. But the main problem arises when you consider special people, because these special people who are left-handed, people who are disabled, who might be blind or deaf or dumb, you have to think differently about these people, and you cannot include them in your average estimation of the rest of the population. So as a designer, what do you do? How do you tackle that problem? That is a huge issue that every designer has to deal with, and in many cases we see that they fail to deal with these situations in the best way possible. And then moving on to selective attention, that is another factor which makes the design process that much more complicated. Selective attention is when you have a tunnel vision, when you're focusing too much on one factor. You're focusing so much on one factor that you neglect everything else that is around you. And this is true. This can be true both in the case of the user and the designer. In the case of the designer, like a few minutes ago I talked about aesthetics, how designers they focus so much on aesthetics, on making the product look so good, that they seldom think about usability and all those things. So that's an example of selective attention. They are so focused on one particular point that they fail to see all the other. They fail to take into consideration all the other factors that might influence the way the user uses the device. And in the case of the user, selective attention can be demonstrated in special circumstances. Say, for example, if you're using an electric toaster, and if the wiring of the toaster is up to some extent exposed, and say, for example, you leave the toast in there and you go to the washroom, and when you come back you see that the toast is burned. So immediately the alarm bell goes off in your head, and the only thing that you care about is getting the toast out of there. You think that it could probably catch fire, so you don't think about, okay, is it really safe to put my hand in there, or should I first switch the power supply off and then do this? You don't think about that, because you are focusing selectively, you're focusing undividedly on just one particular aspect, and that is to free yourself from the danger. So what you do is you take a knife and you poke it in and you get the toaster out. So in many of the cases you will you will be able to not get electrocuted, but in many cases you might even get electrocuted because the wires are exposed, and that is a huge problem. And so this also applies in the case of the designer, because they were so focused on making it functional, making the toaster functional and look nice and everything, that they did not really think about that they did not really think that people might actually behave this way in times of danger. So if they only wanted, they could have just built some sort of mechanism which would not keep the wires, such dangerous wires, exposed. But they thought that, okay, why would people do that? Why would people poke try to take out toaster with a steel knife or any cutlery? They know that they're gonna get electrocuted, so they counted on their common sense. But what they failed to consider is that common sense sometimes does not work when it comes to danger. So this is selective attention in the case of both the user and the designer. Then we move on to the two deadly temptations that designers can have, and these are very destructive. The first one is creeping featureism. Now this is the urge, the desire, the temptation of the designer to to include as many new features to the new product as possible, and they do this even if the people are really ready for the new features, or even if the users really want it or not. They don't really care much. They are so enthusiastic about including these features that they just go ahead and release next product with 10 new features, and that has been the case for the past 6-7 years or so. And so that this can create a lot of confusion for the user, because the user gets a new product and right afterwards they get the next model, and they find out that whatever the older model had, this one probably doesn't have, and this new model does things a lot differently from the old model. So the learning curve that they had to go through when they bought the first model, they're gonna have to go through all that from scratch all over again when they start using the new model. So that is a huge headache in the part of the user. So if designers could control themselves a little better, then perhaps we would have much better devices, much more that would grow towards perfection through evolutionary design. The other factor, the other deadly temptation that designer has, is to create an image of sophistication on the device or whatever they design, even if it is necessary. Whether or not it is necessary, many of the designers don't really care. What they want to do is create an image of unnecessary sophistication, so that both they do this, and even a lot of consumers, they see a very a new device, say for example a camera with a lot of functions, which looks really good and all, and they think this is the latest technology and I have to get this, and they feel good for having something so sophisticated, whereas they could have done better than they could have done without all that sophistication. Then we move on to how to design usable computers. This is actually a few topics. I just merged them together and put it into one. How we can effectively design usable computers. So the first thing that designers should keep in mind is visibility. They should make the actions of the computer as visible to the user as possible. For example, if if a user does something and and some sort of execution is happening within the computer, then the designer should make it in such a way that the user is fully informed about whatever is happening within the computer, so that there are no gaps and there is no confusion. And if that happens, then the user feels much safer. For example, if something is happening, then if they are completely in the dark, then they wouldn't know what to expect, and you see people is falling down on their knees and praying that nothing goes wrong. But you shouldn't put users in you shouldn't keep users in the dark like that. So that's one factor. The other thing is understandability. Quite often you get warning messages from the computer, things that you don't even understand and that don't even look like human language, English or whatever. It does not look like human language. So instead of doing that, designers nowadays, the computers don't come like that anymore. Computers are becoming far smarter than they used to be, and they are far more understandable than they used to be. So that's good news, but still there are some gaps to be filled, and so designers must make the computer and everything that happens within the computer and on the screen as understandable to the user as possible, so that they can use their own knowledge and their logic to really find out what is happening. Then comes consistency. The computer might have different modes, and the designer should make the computer in such a way that the computer will behave in almost exactly the same way in different modes. So in that way, if the user has to shift between modes, switch between modes, then they would at least know what to expect. They would not be completely they wouldn't completely fall from the sky if something out of the ordinary happened, and something out of the ordinary should not happen. That's what the designers should take care to do. And the last factor that must be covered is restriction. Now, there are many things that can be done on a computer to ruin it completely. So the designer should design it in such a way that that the computer safeguards against such errors, and if there are any irreversible actions possible, then the designer should make it should provide sufficient warnings on the screen and on the body of the computer that don't do this and don't do that, and so that the user will know the full size of the situation if they try to do something harmful and something undesirable. And the designer can also restrict the users to a fixed set of actions and fixed type of actions, so that they stay within a boundary or within a safe boundary, and they don't do anything outrageous. And yeah, that's about it, and that's how you can design usable computers. And this is why design is such a huge challenge, because you see all these factors, all of these have to be considered all together. And as I said in the beginning, the designer has to think multidimensionally, and for that the designer really does, you would think that the designer does need some time, a lot of time. So that's why evolutionary design should be allowed to happen, natural design should be allowed to happen, so that the development from one model to the next is as gradual as possible, so that the designers can work as meticulously as possible in order to achieve a design that is as close to perfection as humanly possible. That's about it for the design challenge. Thank you very much.